So I want to share with you a capstone of our series on making the case for Israel. I wanted sufficient time to be able to unravel, and discuss. This video, which we'll talk about in a moment, comes at a particularly opportune time, a time following the International Criminal Court putting out a warrant with putting the faces of Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, and his foreign minister or Ministry of Defense, putting them on the post office of The Hague, hanging them as if they are international criminals guilty of genocide and of purposefully starving the Palestinian people in Gaza. This is a heinous accusation, a ridiculous accusation, but one that doesn't surprise me coming in the world in which we are presently engaged. Furthermore, as if it was insufficient to put the Prime Minister of Israel, labeling him a criminal, guilty of genocide, we have three nations. It was Ireland, Norway, and I don't know, some other insignificant European nation, all recognizing the Palestinian state. This is not a United Nations declaration, although they had made their declaration 2 weeks prior to advance them along the route to being recognized as a state. But these three nations decided, no, we cannot wait for the United Nations. Let us reward torture, rape, the burning of whole families, the kidnapping, the hostage taking of hundreds, including 5 American citizens who are still being held. Let us reward the death of over 1,200 Israelis in one day with political recognition as a state. Which, by the way, those of us who are parents, that might be something you want to share with your children. Here's how it goes. Act in the most heinous, irresponsible, and wicked way possible, and you will get what you want. You want a second dessert? Here it is. Here's how you do it. That is what the lesson for the world is, right? That is what the lesson that is right now being learned in the Middle East and throughout the world is. Act heinously, achieve your goals. Into this comes a journalist by the name of Douglas Murray in the UK. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Douglas Murray. If you are not presently familiar with Douglas Murray, you will want to be familiar with him after this morning. There is no more articulate journalist who is telling the truth and calling shots as they are, unlike any other journalist. So, let's look at journalist Douglas Murray and focus on this particular passage. We're going to be stopping and starting, rewinding, going forward. Let's take it from the opening is going to be this conversation between Douglas Murray and another anchor, South African anchor, journalist, and we'll pick it up where she is accusing Israel of genocide, and we'll see what Douglas Murray has to say about that all too common accusation. Let's go ahead and roll that minute or two of that video. I'll stop you and then I'll rewind you.
I don't think that at all that what's happening in Gaza is genocide. I think it's an unbelievable smear against Israel. I've covered that war as I've covered many others.
Don't you think it's a self-inflicted smear against Israel?
No, I mean, I was in Ukraine last year. Are the Ukrainians committing genocide? I ask you.
What's that got to do with Israel?
I ask you, there are many wars going on.
Yeah.
Is Ukraine committing genocide?
No.
Right.
Is Russia committing genocide?
Russia is committing a war of hostile aggression, for sure. Although it doesn't seem to be attempting to eradicate the Ukrainian population as a whole, which is, of course, what genocide is.
Which is what Israel seems to be doing with Palestine.
Which is not doing.
I know that you worked for Fox News, and I was called by Fox News some time back to talk about the genocide happening in South Africa, and I said there is no genocide happening in South Africa. So I was surprised that Fox could then see what was happening in South Africa as genocide, and yet what's happening in Israel.
Let's stop it. Let's go back to the beginning. What we're going to see here in the back and forth is someone who actually is in command of facts and someone who is in command of questions that she thinks is going to win an argument. But technique and obfuscation does not win an argument. Being in command and control of facts with the ability to articulate them. In other words, to have the facts in your back pocket so that when someone, which all too often happens, somebody repeats the same, reading off the same script, and you can watch channel after channel, turn the stations, watch at 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 5 a.m., watch the same questions and the same talking points repeated over and over and over again, as if the journalists are reading from the same script. Let's see how it's done. Okay, going from the beginning, the issue of genocide has been brought up. Douglas Murray, take it away.
I don't think that at all that what's happening in Gaza is genocide. I think it's an unbelievable smear against Israel.
Okay, so we are all too used to hearing the term genocide bandied about. What does genocide mean? It means the purposeful eradication of an entirety of a people. That's what genocide means. So when Douglas Murray says, I do not believe what is happening is genocide, he's following the definition of what genocide actually is. The word genocide is not an elastic term, is not one that you can just throw in because it puts people back on their heels. It's like calling people racist, right? I'm thrown back on my head. That's the worst thing possible. You can call me a racist, and all of a sudden I don't know how to respond or what to say. Douglas Murray, keeping a cool head, just responds accordingly to each fact. So, it's not genocide. It is a smear against Israel. Go.
I've covered that war as I've covered many others.
Don't you think it's a self-inflicted smear against Israel?
Okay, stop.
No.
Okay, so you've been accused of genocide. Douglas Murray says, no, this is not genocide. The reporter then says, okay, I'm not going to get anywhere with that. Well, don't you think that the very fact that anybody would call out your genocide is actually your fault? It's a self-inflicted smear. So if you can't score points just by reading off the script as it comes, what you do is you then turn and say, okay, well, genocide, well, it's a smear. Okay, is it a self-inflicted smear? And the fact that anybody's calling it genocide, isn't that Israel's fault? No, let's go.
I mean, I was in Ukraine last year. Are the Ukrainians committing genocide?
Stop. Technique. Okay? You've responded to the question with facts. Turn it around. This is judo. And instead of being the interviewee, press the offensive and become the interviewer. We're going to see this is a tactic that Douglas Murray uses often and to great effect. So much so that when he does so and says, okay, there's dead people in a war, okay, so if we're going to use that standard, is Ukraine committing genocide? She doesn't know what to say because he's now taken her off script. She knows what the powers behind her have instructed her to say, and she has no response. Go ahead.
I ask you.
What's that got to do with Israel?
I ask you, there are many wars going on.
Yeah.
Is Ukraine committing genocide?
No.
Right.
Is Russia committing genocide?
Russia is committing a war of hostile aggression, for sure.
Stop. So she doesn't know what to do. She says, what does that have to do with Israel? Maybe we can get it back on track. He won't allow her to go back on track. And then presses the issue. And is Russia committing genocide? Well, if not, Ukraine is committing genocide. How about Russia? Let's talk about genocide. Let's keep the subject on genocide so we can get back to Israel committing genocide. Douglas Murray has nothing to do with that. Go ahead.
Although it doesn't seem to be attempting to eradicate the Ukrainian population as a whole, which is, of course, what genocide is.
Which is what Israel seems
Stop.
to be doing.
Okay. She's desperate to get the subject back to Israel. He informs her in a very clear way what genocide is, and instead of taking a clue, taking the hint that he is not going to agree with her under any circumstances that Israel is committing genocide, she doubles down and said, which is what Israel seems to be doing. And then he's going to say, well, which is not doing. Good.
Which is not doing.
I know that you work for Fox News.
Hang on.
I was called by Fox News.
Now I'll change the subject, and because I know that Fox News is a naughty network for my viewers, if I now throw some smoke and bring up Fox News, thereby associating, not with any actual facts, but associating just by the fact that I've brought it up, associating Douglas Murray in the camp of Fox News, well, she will then attempt to grab the quote-unquote high ground by putting him back at his heels. He does not fall for it. Go.
Some time back to talk about the genocide happening in South Africa. And I said, there is no genocide happening in South Africa. So I was surprised that Fox could then see what was happening in South Africa as genocide and yet what's happening in Israel as...
I don't speak for Fox. But the allegation of genocide against Israel, why would Israel be committing genocide in Gaza?
Well, what would you describe it?
It's a war. It's which I've seen up close.
Stop.
Okay.
She's got to stay on genocide, no matter what. And then instead of saying Israel is not committing genocide and denying it again, which he's already done and made a clear case, he asks her, why would Israel be committing genocide? You're making an accusation. Why would they be committing genocide? So we can get an idea of what's actually, if anything, going on in her head beyond what she has written down on the notes or in the teleprompter in front of her. Okay, go.
So let me just explain that. If you start a war, which is what Hamas did on the 7th of October, if you start a war, there are repercussions. There are repercussions to Russia for starting a war against Ukraine. Russia's lost a lot of troops. There are repercussions for Hamas for starting a war against Israel.
So do you think there are repercussions for an illegal occupation?
What's illegal occupation?
Okay, now she's moving on to another topic. So let's go, because she's getting nowhere with genocide, so now she's going to go back to the old tried and true illegal occupation, which may work for South African audiences, it may work for European audiences, but it does not fly with our friend Douglas Murray here. All right, so what I want to do now is mark where we are right here. I want to go back to the beginning. I want you to see that whole genocide conversation, and then we're going to start that illegal occupation section that follows. Watch the whole thing.
I don't think that at
Watch
all
the technique,
what's happening in
the
Gaza
tennis
is
ball going back and
genocide.
forth.
I think it's an unbelievable smear against Israel. I've covered that war, as I've covered many others.
Don't you think it's a self-inflicted smear against Israel?
No, I mean, I was in Ukraine last year. Are the Ukrainians committing genocide? I ask you.
What's that got to do with Israel?
I ask you, there are many wars going on.
Yeah.
Is Ukraine committing genocide?
No.
Right.
Is Russia committing genocide?
Russia is committing a war of hostile aggression, for sure. Although it doesn't seem to be attempting to eradicate the Ukrainian population as a whole, which is, of course, what genocide is.
Which is what Israel seems to be doing with Palestine.
Which is not doing.
I know that you worked for Fox News, and I was called by Fox News some time back to talk about the genocide happening in South Africa, and I said, there is no genocide happening in South Africa. So I was surprised that Fox could then see what was happening in South Africa as genocide, and yet what's happening in Israel as...
I don't speak for Fox. But the allegation of genocide against Israel, why would Israel be committing genocide in Gaza?
Like, well, what would you describe it?
It's a war. It's which I've seen up close.
Okay.
So let me just explain that. If you start a war, which is what Hamas did on the 7th of October, if you start a war, there are repercussions. There are repercussions to Russia for starting a war against Ukraine. Russia's lost a lot of troops. There are repercussions for Hamas for starting a war against Israel.
So do you think there are repercussions for an illegal occupation?
Okay, stop. All right, so you saw that whole section there. Now, listen, none of us have there's one who has a lovely British accent, but very few of us have the erudite tones and the charming accent of Douglas Murray, which just by opening his mouth gets our attention and seems to be so, although she has a South African accent, close to the, to those of you from UK will say no, but for American ears, it's close enough. She's got her own charming little accent, but she undercuts it with her snide, know-it-all persona, and there's nothing snide, know-it-all about Douglas Murray. He just responds even-temperedly, and all of us can do this. However, it requires somewhat of a command of the facts, right? And being able to recognize when someone is saying something that has an agenda behind what they're actually saying, okay? And being able to diffuse what they're saying, put it back in their court, which is what he's masterful at doing. Now, having failed at genocide, she now moves on to Israel being to blame for everything that they are experiencing because of their illegal occupation of Palestinian lands. Let's let this go for a little bit, and then we'll go back to this section right here.
What's the illegal occupation?
of Israel against the Palestinians.
Where?
That is an illegal occupation.
Where?
It is a determined illegal occupation.
Gaza?
Of course, Gaza and the West Bank.
Have you been to Gaza?
Yes, I have.
Is it occupied by the Israelis?
It's completely sealed off, as you know. That's
By
why
who?
they call it by the Israelis.
And who?
By the Israelis, by the US, and whoever else supports
And who else?
the Israelis. Isn't that enough?
No, tell me who else is allegedly sealing the Gaza.
I'm saying that Israel
What?
has completely encircled Gaza. Nothing goes in, nothing goes
Gaza
out, as
has.
you know.
Well, as you know, if you've been, Gaza also has a border with Egypt. Why do you not mention Egypt? Egypt has a stronger fence to fence in the people of Gaza.
Okay,
than
so you
Israel
agree
does.
that Gaza has been fenced off?
No, it's fenced off, although you might note that there are more workers until the 7th allowed into Israel to work and indeed to have medical treatments and others that were considered necessary, which Hamas doesn't provide. There was plenty more people every day coming into work in Israel from Gaza until the 7th than were going the other way into Egypt. So if I go back to this question, why do you say there's an illegal occupation of Gaza? Why did you say that?
Stop.
Because there is.
Okay. Now, it's masterful, right? It's a master class. It's a 9-minute master class on how to handle someone with an agenda who does not have, while she has an agenda, she doesn't have the facts. She just has accusations. And this can be used not only in the Israel Gaza situation, but this can be used the next time somebody calls you a racist, a homophobe, a Islamophobe, a this phobe, a that phobe, right? Whatever anybody wants to throw an accusation at you, this is a master class on how to defend a position. This is what I call jujitsu, okay? Arguing. All right, people think that that's Asian, right? But it's actually Jewish. That's why it's called Jiu-Jitsu, right? You're turning the tactics of the opposition upon itself, using their strength and making it their weakness. So let's go. Did we go back to that point? Great. Now be ready to stop. Good.
Occupation.
Of Israel against the Palestinians.
Where?
That is an illegal occupation.
Where?
It
Stop.
is a determined.
Okay. She makes an accusation. Not only occupation, but illegal occupation. He would like to know where. Don't just accept it. Challenge it. Where is this occupation of which you speak? Next.
The illegal occupation.
Gaza.
Of course, Gaza and the West Bank.
Stop.
What we say-
Now, what have we been talking about this entire time? Gaza, the conflict between Gaza and Israel. Israel is not presently in a conflict with the West Bank. However, she attempts now, knowing that she has not a leg to stand on, she is going to conflate the two, Gaza and the West Bank, and make it not about Hamas, but about the Palestinian people in general and how wicked the past 50 years of Israel's existence have been since the 67 war, okay? If not going back to the 48 existence of Israel. So he's going to then say, okay, occupation of Gaza and the West Bank. No. We're not going to talk about the West Bank. He's going to stay with Gaza. Have you been to Gaza? And she had actually already previously said that she had covered the Middle East because she had been stationed in, I don't know, Qatar or somewhere in the Middle East, as if the Middle East is one monolithic community, and that she could understand the Gazans from living 100 miles away in Qatar or wherever she's been, okay, Abu Dhabi. So have you been to Gaza? Let's go.
Gaza.
Yes, I have.
Is it occupied by the Israelis?
It's completely sealed off.
Period. Stop. He asks a question. Is it occupied by the Israelis? Does she answer the question? No. She obfuscates. She attempts to throw some more smoke. No, well, it may not be occupied because everybody knows that Israel withdrew from Gaza in 2006, uprooting Jewish people from their homes in the Gaza Strip and literally giving that entire piece of land to the Palestinian people, who then turned around promptly and forthwith elected Hamas, a terrorist organization, the offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood, to be their government. Everyone knows that. 2006, 18 years, there hasn't been a Jew in Gaza unless they were fighting a war, which they're doing now. But she's going to now, she can't defend her position that Gaza is occupied, which she threw, she's just reaching for straws. Illegal occupation, okay? Well, Gaza's not occupied. It's sealed off. And he says, as you know.
You know, that's
by
why
who?
they call it by the Israelis.
And who?
By the Israelis, by the US and whoever else.
Stop. Okay. We all know, because we can look at a map, right? We all know that Gaza has bordered, it's bordered by Israel, okay, all along the north and on the east, but on the south, and of course the west is the Mediterranean Sea, and the south is Egypt. It's the one nation she will not bring up because it's a Muslim nation. Why won't she bring it up? Because it destroys, it undercuts her accusation about Israel. You know, we hear these educated beyond their ability college students saying that Gaza is the largest open air penitentiary in the world, right? Except that Israel only controls 2 of the borders. The third land border is controlled by Egypt.
And who else?
The Israelis. Isn't that enough?
No, tell me who else is allegedly sealing the Gaza.
I'm saying that Israel has completely
encircled Gaza, which leads me to believe that this journalist is so ignorant that she really doesn't know, or in the moment, she has not remembered that Egypt is on the south border of God. She's so drunk the Kool-Aid. And so all it requires, look at his straight, relaxed, legs spread out, arms nice, comfortable. He hasn't really moved. He's in control. And she's relaxed, but her legs are crossed. And she's putting a barrier. She's got her note between her and Douglas Murray. That's like a shield that she's using. Her body language says, I'm on the defensive, I don't like it. And Douglas Murray, he's not even like leaning forward as in, I'm on the offensive. Douglas Murray hasn't moved. He's just stating, he's letting the facts state the case for him, okay? And so obviously she does not know that Egypt is on the border with Gaza and completely, otherwise she wouldn't say completely encircled Gaza. Go.
Encircled Gaza. Nothing goes in, nothing goes out, as you know.
Well, as you know, if you've been, Gaza also has a border with Egypt. Why do you not mention Egypt?
Stop. If you've been, as you know, he treats her with a great deal of respect, more respect than she deserves. It does not devolve into a shouting match. It does not devolve into a tit for tat. He just literally calmly presses the point. Surely you know. Of course you know, if you've been there, as you've said, that Egypt. Why don't you mention Egypt? Go.
Egypt has a stronger fence to fence in the people of Gaza.
Okay,
than
so
Israel
you agree
does.
that Gaza has been fenced off?
No, it's fenced off, although you might note that there are more workers until the 7th allowed into Israel to work and indeed to have medical treatments and others that were considered necessary, which Hamas doesn't provide. There was plenty more people every day coming into work in Israel from Gaza until the 7th than were going the other way into it.
Stop. Okay. She says, you agree that Gaza is fenced off. And he says, yes, of course, which for any of us who have ever been to any country, anywhere, aside from the southern border of the United States at this present time, okay, we are used to fences and walls and checkpoints, right? Anybody who, go up to Canada, right? Isn't there a fence, a wall, a checkpoint between us, the U.S., and of course there is. How about Europe? Right? You ever take the Ural and go from one tiny European country to the other, and then every so often you have to stop, and then you have to hand your passport in because you're about to cross over a border between nations, because Gaza is its own independent entity, not a state, but independent from Israel. It is indeed, there is a fence between them and Israel. However, that fence opened every day as hundreds, is it thousands? I don't know, okay? A tremendous number of workers every day came in to work the economy of Israel. They worked at the kibbutzes that wound up being massacred. That's how they got the intelligence of spied it all out. These people live here. This is the schedule. This is how it goes. This is the roadmap for this kibbutz. There are some helpless families here, which we can attack. The hotel industry. If you've ever gone to Israel and stayed in their hotels, you know full well that the vast majority of workers in any Israel hotel, they're Palestinians. And they come in for the day and they leave after the day is over. They get a little work permit, whatever, and they come in and out. So, yeah, it's fenced because it's a separate entity from Israel, but they're not trapped there. However, they abuse the privilege, if I can say that, by storming Israel and killing 1,200 people and taking 130, actually, well, there were more, but still there's 130 who were still hostages 7 months in. Okay, so good.
Egypt. So I go back to this question. Why do you say there's an illegal occupation of Gaza? Why did you say that?
Because there is.
Why? Well, who is
Israel
occupying
is an occupying state.
No.
It is internationally recognized.
No, it's not. It's not at all.
I want to move
that's
on.
That's your view. Hang on, that's your view, and
okay,
I have to correct your view.
Our views
I have
differ.
to correct. No, it doesn't. The facts, our views might differ, but the facts are the facts.
Stop.
And I want.
Now, here Douglas Murray has enough, and you see now his body is leaning forward. He is indeed pressing the offensive because he's finding this woman to be absolutely obsequious and ridiculous, okay? He's not able to respect her attitude or her arguments, and so now he's going on the attack, and he said, why do you continue to say illegal occupation? Give me an answer. I demand an answer, right? And that's what, in a very English lovely, I'm sorry, I think he's Irish, I don't know what he is, Irish, Scottish. But now I want to pick you up on.
To pick you up on something you just did.
I'm interviewing you.
I know, but
Yes.
I think you're uninformed.
Stop.
No.
I want to follow up on something you said. She, defensive. I'm interviewing you, okay? And she's smiling, but look at that face. That's a fake plastic smile. And she's got the hand there, which is defensive. I'm interviewing you. Let me put my hand up to defend myself. and my smile to mask the fact that I am losing control of this interview very quickly. Go ahead.
So you are uninformed because
really?
first of all,
Yes.
you didn't say that Egypt is blockading Gaza. Secondly, you claim that Israel...
I'm talking about Israel here, and I want to move.
It's very convenient for you to mention Israel because you've clearly got an animus here. But let me come on to the second point.
Stop.
Let me come to the second.
So we see a difference in this conversation. For the first time, we see the two of them talking over one another. He's pressing his point. She realizes, I am losing. And so she tries to obscure what he's saying and tries desperately to regain control. Look, she's got one hand holding for dear life on that couch, right? And she's smiling, right? We see a lot of women in public circumstances with the silly smiles and the laughs, okay? Two I can think of, two cacklers, Hillary and Kamala, excuse me. But whatever you think of their politics, absolutely, they're cacklers in chief. And she's doing the same here in a very reserved South African way, okay? So now he says, you're wrong. Now, let's before we get to the second point, let's go back to that point where we started the, Good. Now just watch that whole thing. Good. Right there.
Allowed into Israel to work and indeed to have medical treatments and others that were considered necessary, which Hamas doesn't provide. There was plenty more people every day coming into work in Israel from Gaza until the 7th than were going the other way into Egypt. So I go back to this question. Why do you say there's an illegal occupation of Gaza? Why did you say that?
Because there is.
Why? Well, who is
Israel
occupying
is an occupying state.
No.
It is internationally recognized.
No, it's not. No, it's not at all.
I want to move
that's
on.
Your view. Hang on, that's your view, and
Okay,
I have to correct your view.
I have to correct your view.
No, it doesn't. The facts, our views might differ, but the facts are the facts, and I want to pick you up on something you just did.
I'm interviewing you.
I know, but
Yes.
I think you're uninformed.
No.
So let me you are uninformed because
really?
first of all,
Yes.
you didn't say that Egypt is blockading Gaza. Secondly, you claim that Israel...
I'm talking about Israel here, and I want to move.
It's very convenient for you to mention Israel because you've clearly got an animus here. But let me come on to the second point. As you well know, in 2005, Israeli troops ripped Jewish families from their home in the Gaza.
That was after Palestinians had been ripped from their homes in Gaza.
I mean, how far back do you want to go?
Okay.
You can do the Hebron massacre of 1924 if you want.
Absolutely.
But let me finish. Allow me to finish one point.
What I want to talk about is
we're
talking about the action at the International Court of Justice,
No.
okay?
But first of all, before we got onto that, you've got to inform your viewers. Yes, but we've got to inform your viewers of the facts, and you just misled them. In 2005, Israeli troops ripped every Jewish family from their homes in Gaza and handed over all of Gaza, which was completely clear of Jews.
That was after two Nakbas, I think in 1948 and 1967, when Palestinians were ripped from their homes that were originally there.
That's your
I know, so let's
specific interpretation of the history, and yours is a very... No. But we can agree to disagree, but don't misinform your viewers. And
Likewise.
you can go back... Well, I'm not misinforming your viewers. I'm informing them because you're not. The point that I'm trying to make, which
Israel
you keep
moved away from Gaza, and Gaza has been sealed off ever since.
The point you keep on trying to distract everyone from is that Israel took every Jew from Gaza in 2005, handed it over to the Palestinians, who then voted in Hamas, and to the great detriment of the Palestinian people. They have been ruled by Hamas for the last 18 years. If you want to look to the source of the conflict, look to that fact.
Okay, so how many illegal settlements are there in the West Bank? That's also illegal.
Stop. She now can't win Gaza. She realizes defeat. Let's go to the West Bank and go back to illegal occupation. Go.
The United Nations, under international law, those settlements on the West Bank are illegal.
Which ones were legal in your view?
In the Middle East, And every time there would be a peace agreement, settlements would pop up. And that's why we are where we are today.
No, it's not.
So let's try and move on.
No,
let's try and
it's
move on.
not at all where we are.
Hang on. We're
What,
not achieving anything here, so let's try and move on.
No.
Let's try and move on.
No, it's very, because you just did it again. You just threw in another false fact. We are not where we are today because of settlements in the West Bank that are disputed. That's not why Hamas broke out of Gaza on the 7th of October and massacred people in their homes.
As we know,
that's
Hamas
not
got
because of the
Israeli
West Bank,
support
and you
to
well
take
know
on
it.
Yasser
You well know
Arafat.
that.
You well know that
Hamas did not commit the massacre of the 7th of October because of settlements. They did it by their own admission because they want to massacre every Jew they can get their hands on, and Hamas has said they will do it again and again. So don't get onto the distraction of settlements. That is a second-order priority. The first order...
It's easy to fob those off, isn't it?
It's easy for you to try to distract people about it. But I'm saying, don't distract them from the crimes of Hamas. Don't do that.
I'm not distracting.
Well, you are. You just said that's why they did it. You said they did it because of the settlements.
And those crimes by Hamas were repugnant.
I'm glad you said that,
despicable.
finally.
Finally. But what I'm saying...
We've been here for some time with you going on about settlements and everything else.
So we've got an illegal occupying force. We've got a situation that is making...
Hamas
has grown in popularity ever since this war on Gaza because Israel is making people more and more increasingly militant. So what is happening at the moment?
Israel's making...
Okay. Hamas attacked. They were about as militant as they could get, massacring 1,200 people. Israel responds, and that is actually, once again, blame Israel. It's always Israel's fault. Doesn't matter that there's 1,200 dead Jews and 230 hostages. Okay? It's always Israel's fault. And if the first area of blame doesn't stick, let genocide, whatever, let's go to occupation, or let's just simply say it's all their fault no matter what. Go.
People more militant.
It's not working.
Do you think that Hamas is making people more militant or not?
Let's go back to the ICJ.
Do you think that Hamas is making people more militant or not?
Well, it's a catch-22,
Oh,
isn't
I
it?
see.
And until this illegal occupation is broken, until the suffering of the Palestinians is acknowledged...
Do you think that Hamas are interested in a solution where there's any Jew in that region or not?
I'm asking you the questions and
well,
I want you to move on.
I'd love you to answer that.
Uncomfortable.
We can answer it. Let's just move on.
Have a go then.
Okay. So
have
ICJ,
a go. Do you think Hamas want a peaceful solution with the Jews?
I'm asking you the questions. We can discuss this afterwards.
Oh, no, I'd love to do this one on air. Do you think Hamas want to live beside the Jews, yes or no?
They have recently said that they would be happy to live next to Jews, but they want a two-state solution. A two-state solution has been in the offing.
Hamas has not said they want a two-state solution. They carried out a massacre on October the 7th of as many people as they could, stole a lot of hostages who you still also haven't referred to. There's more than 100 Jewish hostages still in Gaza. That's real kidnapping, and that's real occupation of somebody. And Hamas has said they do it again and again.
How do you feel when you see those children who've been shot in the back of the head? How do you feel when you see those children?
The Jewish children?
Now, she's out of cards. The only other card she has is, the children. It's always the suffering children. Surely you can blame Israel for the suffering children. Go.
Or the Palestinian children.
The Palestinian children.
I feel the same on each of them.
Okay.
I think it's all a tragedy.
Okay, good.
And I think
it is
it's
a tragedy
all on
both
Hamas.
sides.
I think
so
it's
let's
all
try
on
and move
Hamas.
on.
They shouldn't have started a war.
There's
consequences to starting a war.
Okay. There's a master class on how to respond to very clearly a hostile interviewer. He mostly kept his cool until he couldn't, and then he just decided to take control of the interview and press the offense because she obviously was an ignoramus when it came to the facts of what she was trying to argue. It's one thing if two people are in command of facts and let's interpret the facts in different ways. She obviously had no facts on her side. He had all the facts on his side. All she had were accusations. And he dealt with it in, I think, an extraordinarily graceful way. So that's our friend Douglas Murray, my favorite journalist to date. And I thought that would be a nice capstone. Yeah, I thought it'd be a nice capstone for our study on a case for Israel's right to the land. Make sure that you respond. Don't, back in the George W. Bush administration, there were all kinds of accusations. And I remember literally it was a policy, it was George W. Bush's policy, not to answer just let them stand. Don't get down in the mud with them. Don't sully yourself, whatever. And wound up not responding to a lot of, and some of which were genuine accusations, with facts behind them, and some of which were just emotional like this. But the fact that he didn't respond, and that certain people, they're nervous, they get very nervous, they get uptight about confrontation and conflict. Can't we all get along, right? And the bottom line is, if you're going to stand up for truth, sometimes we can't get along. And that has repercussions not only for politics in Israel, that's politics for sharing the gospel. Because you know what? If Jesus is the Messiah, if he is truly the only way, the only truth, and the only life, the only means by which man can be saved, then that means that all the other solutions out there are wrong by definition. That Jesus is right, everyone else is wrong. And we can be loving and we can be polite. He never goes beyond politeness, I think, even when he gets a little heated there. But we have to be able to mix it up. And if we're worrying about being nice and being liked by everybody, and in so doing, never confronting what we know to be falsehood, then the culture, the world, the flesh, and the devil are going to run rampant over us. And as I look at the state of the church in America, circa 2024, I can see a church that has been run over rampant by an aggressive culture, and we simply have mostly have been unwilling to engage. This is a lesson for us, not only about Israel, but other areas as well. Polite, firm, but stand your ground. I've got to run to Springfield. Please pray for me on the road, however long it takes to travel 440 miles or whatever it is. Thank you so much. I will be back with you, God willing, next week. And we will continue with our service as per normal.